Hello, welcome to my channel. Welcome to my June 2024 bullet journal setup. I am super excited about this video because for my theme this month, I am doing a theme that I've been planning since like January of this year, and I can't wait to start making art and showing it with you guys. But also this video has a lot of issues that happened. I had a lot of problems with my art that we'll definitely talk about as we go on. But before we get too far into it, I did want to just make a quick little announcement in case you haven't heard already. I have actually started a second YouTube channel. That's right, a second one. So if you've been around here for a while, you know that I am really interested in reading along with bullet journaling, and I've been integrating some book content into my journaling videos with reading bujo setups and stuff, but I decided that I just want to do a little bit more. So I started a second channel. It is called Sophie Joe, or at Sophie_Joe, and that is where I've been posting book videos. As of the time you're watching this, I think 3 videos have been posted so far, and I'm just super excited to chat books over there and do reading wrap-ups and reading vlogs and recommendations and stuff like that. So I just want to let you guys know that if you guys want to see more reading content from me, everything will be under that channel, and I'll have it linked right in the description box below. I'm not going to be posting any more book videos on this channel, including the reading journal spread videos, so you won't be seeing that anymore because all of the information for that video will basically just be on my reading channel. So go check her out instead if you want to see more content from me. Absolutely no pressure to go subscribe over there, obviously. If you don't like reading content, then it's just not for you. I totally get it. But if you do like reading content, then you just get extra content from me, and it's just a win-win for all of us. So yeah, want to make that quick little announcement. But now that that's done, I'm really excited to just get into the setup. So we're doing a really fun theme this month that I've actually been prepping for, or not prepping for, but thinking about since January, and that is an hourglass theme with a desert inside. So I was inspired by the movie Aladdin, if you guys have seen it, and there is a very, very brief scene in that movie where Jasmine the princess gets trapped in an hourglass full of sand. Obviously that's not a crazy concept, having an hourglass with sand in it and stuff, but my original plan was to draw someone sitting in an hourglass with sand, similar to how she was in that movie, and then drawing a city around her. But as I was sketching out the spreads, I realized that I've drawn a person in the past 2 themes so far. I did a rock star in May and then Tinkerbell in April, and I just didn't really feel like dealing with human proportions and stuff right now. I wanted to draw something a little simpler, and so sand dunes, which are basically triangles, and buildings, which are basically rectangles, are a lot easier than trying to draw little humans. So I changed my plan, and instead of drawing a person inside of the hourglass, I'm just doing a little town, a little city. It's inspired by Arabian Nights, some kind of Arabian country with tall tan buildings, some rounded roofs and stuff like that, and they're all sitting on sand dunes inside the hourglass on both levels. And then also around the hourglass, as you can see, there is also going to be some sand. It's like a miniature world inside the hourglass, but the real world is outside, and that's what the thing is sitting on. And then I also have some bonsai looking trees, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I took inspiration from this picture on the left, which is an AI generated photo that I found on Pinterest, but even if these trees are not perfectly realistic as far as the trees you would find somewhere in the desert, I thought they looked cool, so I'm putting them in my fantasy bullet journal world anyway. This is just an aesthetic that I am creating, and I really like it. And then as you can see, there's one big piece of art in the middle, and that's going to be for the cover page, and then the one on the right that's kind of turned sideways, I did it that way to save space in this piece of sticker paper, but that one is also going to be at the top of my spreads in the setup, and I'll show you guys that in just a few minutes. So I'm coloring everything in with alcohol markers. As you guys know, I love this technique, and honestly, so far this year, out of the 6 months, I think 4 of them have used alcohol markers, and 5 of them have used sticker paper, because in January I used watercolor. So I really have been leaning away from just drawing directly into my journal recently, and instead drawing on sticker paper and then cutting it out and pasting it in, and I'm just kind of rolling with it, I'm enjoying this era of my journaling. I like trying new things. I like finding comfort in a style that I've been using recently. So I mean, I don't think this is very repetitive necessarily. Every single month it is something different, but I am using the same technique as it for the past couple months, but I've been enjoying it, so I'm not going to complain about it. I like it, and that's what we're doing again this month. I'm hoping to post a video about how I use alcohol markers and my process for them, not necessarily how I use them in a bullet journal, because I've already made a couple of videos about that before, basically just talking about how I use sticker paper, but I'm going to be talking about my techniques for coloring with alcohol markers, because I have learned more about that, and trying to figure out how to blend and why I like them more than water-based markers in some occasions. So look out for a video coming coming soon on my channel about that. And if you have any questions about alcohol markers, drop them in the comments right now so I know whenever I film that video what to talk about specifically. But basically, I'm using a lot of layering here and starting with the lighter color and then building up to the darkest. So the buildings are all kind of this like pinkish beige color. So I used a very light beige and then added some like pinkier golden shadows. And then the sand has the same beige like starting color, but the shadowing on top of it is more golden and yellowy toned compared to the pinky building. So that's how they differentiate, even though they're very similar in color. And that was my intention because I wanted to make them slightly like distinguishable, but still in the very similar like beige color palette. The trees are of course green with 2 different shades of green just for shadowing, and then the trunks also are the 2 different shades of brown, and I'm using those exact same shades of brown for the hourglass. So there are a lot of overlapping colors, which makes the entire artwork look very cohesive because a lot of the colors are being used for multiple elements. Overall, like I said, start light, build shadows slowly, and I always think about the light source. So although it's not perfectly clear, the moon in the top right, which isn't very realistic like sizing wise or placement or whatever, but like I said, it's a fantasy world, it's okay. But the moon is of course shining light onto everything in this art. And the same thing goes on the second picture where the moon is like behind the sand dunes. And so wherever the moon is, that is where the light is coming from. And so anything facing the moon is where all the like lighter sides are going to be, and I'll put the shadows on the opposite side. So as you can see with the second artwork, all the sand dunes have shadows on the left because the moon is like shining light onto the right side. The only one that doesn't follow this rule is the very, very right sand dune, just because it's mostly covered by the tree. And so even though that's not like perfect, I figured I'd just keep like the consistent shadow on the left like motif going on. So not completely perfect. But then also like with the tree trunk with like the leaves on the tree, you know, so the shadows are on the bottom right sides of everything because the light would come from the top left. Basic, you know, art principles here. Nothing too original. That's just kind of what I'm thinking of to keep a relatively realistic image to these kinds of drawings. I think overall this turned out really, really well. This point in the drawing, I really love how this turned out. And like I said, I've been thinking of an hourglass theme since January. It's been a plan of mine to use it for June because June is my birthday month, if you guys didn't know, and I want to do something fun, and desert really screams summer to me. And of course, June is like the first official month of summer. So yeah, I want to do something that I've been really waiting to do, and that was an hourglass theme. So far it's going out great, right? Well, this is where something bad happened. Unfortunately, I had a very big mistake in the middle of this video. So I've been using Mod Podge recently because my alcohol markers sometimes get very pigmented, and so whenever I close my bullet journal, it'll like make marks on the other side of the page, and I didn't want like yellow splotches all over my spreads. So I pulled out my Mod Podge because this is supposed to be like a clear sealant on top of everything. However, we had some issues because although I waited literally like 30 minutes between coloring and then adding the Mod Podge, I like went to have lunch and came back. Unfortunately, whenever I used the Mod Podge on top of like the trees specifically, the very, very saturated green like got wet again and then like smeared everywhere. So the Mod Podge turned like neon yellow, neon green, and like put neon yellow like splotches all over my artwork. And of course I was pissed, okay, because I just spent like an hour working on this beautiful drawing that I loved a lot, and then all of a sudden there's like neon green everywhere and it looks horrible. It was much worse in person than like you guys can see, thankfully, so it looks a little bit better on camera, but it does really annoy me in real life. So my solution, after like freaking out for a hot second, like I was like having a meltdown, a small one, but a meltdown nonetheless, my solution was to take some white acrylic paint and paint over the Mod Podge on the white, because that was like the main issue with like the neon yellow, because it didn't show up as much like on the parts that were colored, but mostly just the white background. So I used some acrylic white paint, painted over that, tried to fix it as much as I can, make it look as seamless as I could. Then for the littlest details, I went in with a white gel pen and tidied up like the corners and stuff. And I didn't mention this, but during the process of coloring, I did add little white highlights to the artwork, like on the top of the hourglass, on the moon, on the trees, stuff like that. But when I used the Mod Podge over it, the little white highlights turned yellow, so I went over them again with the white to also make that pop. It was a decent solution. I think I feel much better about it than I did like midway through the process, thank goodness. But it isn't a perfect solution because the entire page is not covered with Mod Podge, and so not only does there still have little yellow splotches everywhere in my bullet journal, but it also is not protected from ghosting and smearing. So this is where I want to need you guys' help. I want you guys to please, if you can, recommend any good alcohol marker sealants in the description box below that I can paint on top of this and not have it pick up the color and smear and everywhere. I'm gonna have to order a different one from Amazon and hopefully paint over it in my bullet journal and cross my fingers that everything turns out okay. I'll do some testing before I actually use it directly in my bullet journal, but it's basically still unprotected from like making those yellow marks on the other side of the page, and I don't want that. So basically, yeah, if you have any suggestions, please comment them. I desperately need to try something to make this work because I love using alcohol markers, but they just happen to be too pigmented sometimes, and I just don't like the ghosting everywhere. It's a huge issue. Now, like I said, the acrylic paint mostly helped in covering all of the yellowish parts. Now, my intention when I first drew this was to keep the original rectangles and just paste the rectangles themselves into my bullet journal, but because there were still some splotches of like off-white and yellowish in the white background, I decided to just cut as much as I could off of the artwork. So I cut around everything with my scissors. Yes, this was as time-consuming and tedious as it looks, unfortunately. But I did this just to kind of cut off most of the stuff that was like neon yellow. Even though it was still covered by paint, it did still not look very cute. So I did this, and then putting it into my bullet journal directly in just a minute, you'll see that it does make things look a lot better. It was an unfortunate decision, but I still think it looks great. And I did have to cut off a couple like little sparkles around the edges, but I'll just draw those into my bullet journal directly and it really makes no difference. So yeah, easy enough fix. I did the best that I could to kind of patch things up while filming. I just really wish that this didn't happen, of course, because I wanted this theme to be really cool. Like I said, I've been expecting it since like January, but whatever, we have to roll with the punches. And yeah, that's about it. So finally, we're pulling out my bullet journal again. And as you can see, I'm just trying to arrange this like image on the left side of the cover page. Now, usually the cover page is on the right, but for June, I wanted to make all of the spreads like kind of at once and not have to do too much artwork. So I'm putting the cover page on the left because on the right, as you can see, there is a huge Dutch door system that we're going to be using for the rest of the setup. And that is why I had the small artwork as well, because it's just going to go on the top of the Dutch door right up here. And that way, no matter what spread you're on in the setup, you can still see the artwork. Not only was this really cool because I really spent a lot of time on this artwork, but it also saved me time because I didn't have to make like a new piece of artwork for every single individual spread. Instead, I just took the middle two pages, cut the top like little section off, and that way you can flip between them. Although the cover page is a little bit cut off, obviously, because you can't see like the entire hourglass, you can still see the sand dunes on the top right, and I'm really happy about this. We'll talk about the Dutch doors more in just a second, but for the tabs here, I'm going over them with alcohol markers because I wanted that really dark brown that I got in the deepest shadows of the hourglass. And I used some washi tape to try to stop the alcohol marker ink from like spreading onto the page itself. Unfortunately, it wasn't a perfect solution. It did have a little bit of bleeding, but I did like fix that with white gel pen in a few minutes, so it'll go away. And so I have a pretty crisp line under both of these little tabs, and I like how they contrast against the sand dunes, the like light yellowish beige on the right, so you can still see the tabs, but it still adds some like darkness to the page that is probably missing from the right side since the left side is already really dark. Okay, so like I said, Dutch doors, right? Why am I doing this month? Well, I am in summer. I am out of school. College is over until August, thank goodness. So overall, June is just a really open month for me. I barely have any plans besides my birthday, and I just really wanted to keep things very simple this month. So although I did kind of go extra on the artwork, my spreads themselves are going to be quite simple. On the right here, you'll see I have a calendar, and then when I open the other two spreads, I'll have various different bullet journaling like trackers and things like that. But I didn't want to make a spread or a setup that's going to take me super long time. So by making the artwork ahead of time and then just using the same artwork basically for every spread, at least the alcohol marker artwork, it was just so much easier. And now I can just flip through everything and it looks really nice as like one cohesive setup. The only thing that's not included in here is of course the weekly spreads, and I think the next video I'm going to be posting next week is going to be all my weekly spreads at once. Usually I make a new weekly every Sunday, but for June, because I'm really not busy, I just said I'm not busy. I don't have any definitive plans, but I'm busy because I'm making content for two channels at once because I have my book journal like I mentioned earlier. Because I just have things to do, I don't really want to spend a lot of time making weekly spreads, and also I'm not in a huge artsy mood right now. So like when I sit down and make art, I'll enjoy it, but I don't like crave making art at the moment. I'm gonna do all my weekly spreads at once, and I'll talk about that a lot more next week, so definitely subscribe if you're not already so you won't miss that video. But all the weekly spreads will just come after the setup, and I probably will do a Dutch door in that one as well. So I think June is just the month of Dutch doors for me, and I'm really excited to see how those weekly spreads turn out. And with that being said, so the calendar page right here, as you can see, has a little tree at the bottom, and I did this with all of the like spreads you'll see in just a minute through the Dutch doors because I felt like they looked a little bit plain compared to the art. So I decided to make little mimicries of the art with water-based markers instead. So these are not perfect drawings. As you can see, I had the tree on the front. On this second page, I have like sand dunes. On the third page, I'll have another tree, and then I think a moon and more sand dunes. Anyway, but in my experience, alcohol markers just blend so much better than than water-based markers do, and that's why I like using them more. So the water-based markers did not blend very well. In fact, it could be pretty streaky in some cases, which isn't necessarily like the worst thing in the world, but because it's compared right next to the alcohol markers, it does seem a little bit more obvious than it would on its own. That being said, I still wanted to add some more of the theme into the bottoms of these spreads to kind of tie all of them together cohesively. So I just, used water-based markers in similar color palettes to the alcohol ones to add little artworks on the bottom. Another thing was I kept a very consistent color palette with mostly browns and golds and beiges. Of course, there is green in the trees, but besides that, I'm only using very, very warm tones throughout this setup for all of the headings or the headers, like the boxes that I'm going to be using alphabet stamps on top of, which I haven't done in a hot second. The habit trackers are all have a heading in different various tones of golden and yellow and beige and stuff like that. Then I was thinking about it too. Not only are these great tones for summer and the desert and June, I feel like those all really go together, but also I've used a lot of cool toned colors so far this year. I mentioned this in a past video, but I literally used blue for January, blue and green for March, green for April, and then I did use pink last month, but it was more of a cooler toned pink than a warmer toned. It was leaning on purple almost. So overall, I was really craving my normal favorite colors, which are browns and versions of browns and beiges. So I'm glad we pulled those back in this month for just a really very, very warm tone spreads. Tell me these are not the most warm spreads you've ever seen. It's literally entirely gold. To add some more dimension to these boxes, I liked to add little cross grids in the back of them with a very, very light beige tone that adds a little more texture, but whenever I write on top of it with black, it'll completely show up. I also added this little notebook paper effect for a couple boxes just because it was a fun little thing. The only thing I did was add a horizontal line under the title and then 2 vertical lines to the left of it, and then little circles to indicate hole punches in a piece of notebook paper. This is something that I've seen creators like Lila Journals do, and I think it's just super cute, and it's fun. It doesn't have anything to do with deserts necessarily, but it's nice. I like it. On the left here, I am doing a goals and then focus box and a brain dump on the bottom, just because, I don't know, it's my birthday month. I wanted space to plan anything for my festivities, stuff like that. On the right, I have my habit trackers as usual. I'm doing 9 this month because I had the space to. And then on the next page, you'll see that I have my expenses tracker, and then I have a space on the right, which is going to be accomplishments at 17, because I'm turning 18 this year. So I wanted to go back and think about all of the first things that I did this year or the accomplishments that I made while being 17, because I said this before, I'll say it again, my bullet journal is a time capsule, and so I want to remember all of the good things that happened this year when I flip back through this journal in years to come. Now, I wanted to mention in this video, in case you guys don't know, I do have an online shop where I sell an undated bullet journal, which is a completely personalized bullet journal that I made by myself, and I made all the artwork in it, so it has all the arts for 12 months, but it's completely undated, so you can use it whenever you want, you can color it however you want, and just completely customize it to your own life. Anyway, that's on my online shop, themingostudio.com, but I bring that up because I actually have an hourglass theme in there. It's an hourglass and magic theme, and I really like how it turned out, but I did something very similar for this month, obviously. So if you guys like this hourglass theme or something very similar to it, but you don't really know how to draw it yourself, I would 100% recommend go checking out that undated bullet journal. I'll have it linked down below as it is with all of my videos, because you might enjoy coloring in a very similar design to this on your own time. So yeah, I'll link that down below. Like I said, 12 fantastic, all black and white themes. Yeah, I'm just super excited about it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Well, that is going to be the end of this setup. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like I said, there were definitely some ups and downs in this month, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this is a super beautiful setup. Like I said, I am still kind of getting over the little bit of Mod Podge issues, but overall, I think it looks really great, and I'm really excited to use it. Next week, I'm going to be posting a weekly spread setup video, so I'm going to be making 4 weekly spreads for June, and if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do subscribe so you won't miss that video. I'm sending you guys all so much love. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, an amazing June, and I will see you guys next week.